thoroughly enjoyed. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I found it deeply affecting, and I actually had tears running down my cheeks on the final scene. Now, it's called The Quiet Girl. It's rated M. It's 95 minutes. And we're in rural Ireland in 1981. You've got a 9-year-old by the name of Kate, played by Catherine Clinch. She's one of 5 children. I was sort of counting them because that was the only way I could. There seemed to be a lot of them, about to be 6, who keeps to herself. She says very little, but she observes a great deal. And there's no love shown to her at home. She's struggling with reading at school. Her father's a layabout, drinks too much, gambles. Money is scarce. And it's no family environment to be brought up in. As summer arrives, and with the new baby's arrival not far away, Kate is sent to live with distant relatives, cousins, actually, on a farm 3 hours drive from where she lives. Her father drops her off, but all she has is the clothes on her back because he forgets to take the suitcase that she's packed out of the boot of the car. She's met by a lady called Evelyn, played by Carrie Cowley, kind, caring woman, takes Kate under her wing, treats her gently. And at first her husband, Sean, Andrew Bennett, appears to want nothing to do with her. But in time, he gets to greatly appreciate the person that Kate is. This is a house supposedly without secrets, but there is one dark and painful truth that will be exposed. So it's an Irish language adaptation of a story, Foster, which was written by Claire Keegan, and it was first published in the New Yorker magazine. It was named Best of the Year by that magazine, and it was later expanded and published as a standalone book in the year 2010. The writer and director, Colm Fairreid, first read Foster in 2018, and that's when he determined he'd adapt it for the screen. So the subject matter, we're talking about neglect, we're talking about grief. I thought it was beautifully, sensitively handled, and it starts with the sort of less is more script and extends to very fine acting, striking cinematography, and musical accompaniment. So I found that there was a great deal, magnificent restraint in all that unfolds, Dave.
Oh, it's a beautiful film. It's one of the most beautiful films I think I've seen in a long time. And I thought it was an interesting film because we saw Juniper earlier this year, which was a love story basically between a grandson and a grandmother. And this film kind of carries that over with this beautiful relationship between Kate and Sean that develops during the film. I just was blown away by this movie. It was one of those films where I think I sat there just mesmerized by the entire film. It's such a beautiful film, even though it's such a dark story, and such brilliant acting performances. Catherine Clinch, a first-time actress, and she is amazing through this film. It's one of those films, though, where I wish it did have an answer for the ending, but I still enjoyed the ending that was there as well.
Well, I mean, you don't get the feel. This is a temporary respite, is how I saw it, but I'm not sure whether you saw it the same way. I agree, Catherine Clinch, superb, quiet, as this quiet, neglected girl. Those piercing eyes and that gentle demeanour hits the mark perfectly. And she's complemented, I thought, by the 4 other key figures in the piece. I'll long remember the performance of Carrie Cowley as a woman who has so much love to give. And Andrew Bennett really straddles the archetype of his, well, at first standoffish husband. And you can't but detest Michael Patrick. And he's the father, right? He's the brutish, ever so menacing dad. But that's what the role demands. You know, let's not make the mistake of saying that that's the actor. That's the actor doing what he should be doing very, very well. So I thought that it's a film where patience is rewarded, Peter.
Absolutely. It's a beautifully observed, subtle coming-of-age story with a sort of darker elements involved. And it's so nice to see the development of this young girl as the film progresses. It's interesting to note this is the first of a series of films that the Irish Film Institute is now commissioning to be filmed in the original Irish language, and that I think augurs well for some very strong stories which have that particular dialect or that particular language involved. Yes, I was very impressed by the film, and I think the resolution has some positivity to it, but we won't do any spoilers there.
Explain to me, what, without giving too much away, where did you see that? Because it was about, obviously, the environment that will be in front of her. That was what we're talking about in terms of the ending, and that doesn't give anything away. But where did you see positivity?
That you can see her becoming a bit more confident and a bit more of her own person as the film progresses, and for me it tells me that she is now going to make a good life, because she has had this difficult background, but she's also learned other aspects to her life that she can move forward with.
Which is interesting, because I don't necessarily agree with that. It's kind of like you want to impose that upon the ending. I understand why you'd say that, but I didn't see that. Did you, Dave?
I have my own thoughts on where I think which she might have ended up at the end, and I know that my thoughts are very different to others, but yeah, I thought it was a happy ending, but it was one of those films where I actually did want to know what the screenwriter, director wanted for their character at the end. I just read another screenwriting book recently, and they were talking about the fact that in a lot of modern day films, it feels like screenwriters take the easy way out, where they're like, I'll just let the audience make up their mind, because they've been too scared to fall on a side when it comes to the end, because they don't want to disappoint their audience. But this book was saying that sometimes that's a downfall in cinema, where as an audience, you want the screenwriter to say, this is what happened in the end.
That's interesting. You and I have discussed this before, Dave. I'm generally not unhappy with putting my own take on something at the end. I'm not saying, and the vast majority of films do close out the narrative, unless there's a sequel, and we'll be talking about one of those shortly. But notwithstanding that, where we're asked to do some heavy lifting, no, that's all right. That's okay. It sparks discussion, and that's not a bad thing, I don't think, either.
Yeah.
Peter, your view of endings?
I actually like a film, a narrative that leaves some gaps for the audience to contribute their own understanding of what will happen in the storyline or in the narrative. I think John Krausz and others have said that films that have gaps in them make the audience want to work at it, discuss it, and talk about where the characters could possibly be going, rather than being told everything by the end of the film. Exactly. So I like that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for the vast majority of films. I fully accept that, but I think especially films that do sort of work cerebrally, shall we use that term, I think it's appropriate. And it's interesting that The Quiet Girl, the pacing of it is just perfect. It's not, as I said at the outset, it's not going to be for everybody. This is an independent sort of movie. The language is difficult at times, right? Because I know, Dave, you don't have issues with it, but I was struggling to understand what Michael Patrick was saying, right? The father, on occasions. The sort of Irish accent doesn't sit easily. I love the Irish, don't get me wrong, but I struggle to understand what they're saying from time to time. And I know you've told me in the past that your heritage means that you do have a greater sense of understanding there. Did you understand every word that he was saying?
Yeah, not a problem. Yep.
And Peter?
I did too, actually. I must be more attuned, perhaps, to accents. So, it's fine.
I think it's my shortcoming. There you go. Or one of my many shortcomings. Let's get some scores. The Quiet Girl, Peter?
A really good film, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and it's rated M, runs for 95 minutes. And Dave?
I'm giving it 9 out of 10. I really, really loved it.
And I'm giving it 8.5. So, yeah, we're all in the same territory, which is terrific. Let's